Okay, fellas, what's happening? This is your boy Alan Roger Currie again. Quick announcement: I will be having my second Patreon exclusive live stream today at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern, but it's only for $10 subscribers and up. My $10, $20, and $50 subscribers. So if you're either a $2 subscriber or a $5 subscriber, you will not be able to participate. It's only for $10 and up. Yeah, each month I do a minimum of 2 Patreon exclusive live streams. Some months I do as many as 3. I usually have one Patreon exclusive live stream that's for $5 and up, which I had just last Thursday, a week ago today. And then my second one is always for $10 and up, $10 and up. So I want to make that quick announcement. Speaking of the free portion versus the Patreon exclusive portion, for this video, I'm going to talk about something that has to do with risk versus reward. And I'm going to give just a general overview during the free portion. But if you want more detailed commentary, you would have to join me in my Patreon exclusive portion. Before I get to that, I want to make a quick lighthearted note about something because I keep still receiving messages. Now, of course, everybody knows about my infamous angry rant last week. And during that angry rant, one of the things I declared was, I said, I'm the king of the manosphere, and even more specifically, that I was the king of the black manosphere. And some people have written me notes about that, either disagreements. Alan, I respectfully disagree with you. I think so-and-so is the leader of the black manosphere, and I think so-and-so has more credibility to be the leader of the black manosphere more so than you. That doesn't mean I don't like you, but I think, that was you being very egotistical. But then, believe it or not, I had some people that agreed with that assessment. They said, Alan, I do believe you're the king of the manosphere and the black manosphere, because you have more overall credibility than anybody else associated with the black manosphere. Like a couple of people said, Alan, you're the only person who has a Wikipedia page that's associated with the black manosphere. Nobody else has, which is true, at least to my knowledge. Now, some people might say, well, Alan, Tariq Nasheed, he has a Wikipedia page. Tommy Sotomayor has a Wikipedia page. But those two guys aren't technically, they're not really considered a part of the manosphere. Well, technically, I'm not really considered a part of the manosphere anymore because I left, which brought up another criticism. Some people said, Alan, you did a video saying you officially wanted to disassociate yourself from the manosphere. So how can you now turn around and say that you're the king? Let me just put that to rest. I'll be honest. A lot of that came from anger. So I don't know if I really meant that in seriousness when I said I was, when I yelled and said, I'm the king of the manosphere. I already have 2 nicknames that are pretty official worldwide. And that would be, one nickname I gained about 7 or 8 years ago was Godfather of Direct Verbal Game. Yeah, a lot of people worldwide refer to me as the Godfather of Direct Verbal Game Advice, which is a nickname I fully embrace and agree with, because I am. I am the Godfather of Direct Verbal Game Advice. I mean, before I came out with my Mo 1 ebook in May of 1999, nobody was espousing direct verbal game to the degree that I was. Nobody. So that's a nickname I do have worldwide that I fully embrace. Matter of fact, Anthony Johnson of the 21 Convention, that's how he introduced me at the 21 Convention in 2017 and 2018 as the Godfather of Direct Verbal Game Advice. So that's one nickname I already have. And a nickname I had probably even before that nickname was the nickname the King of Verbal Seduction and Kinky Erotic Dirty Talk. the king of verbal seduction, and the king of kinky, erotic, dirty talk. Yeah, I first earned that nickname, the woman who you always hear me refer to. Well, actually, I've had a few women. I would say over my lifetime, I've actually had probably as many as 9 or 10 women that have given me some variation of that nickname. Like I've had women call me the king of phone sex, the king of talking dirty, the king of one night stands, the king of seduction, the king of quick seduction, king of straightforward seduction. I've had a lot of variations of that nickname. But the one that stuck was actually the woman who you've heard me refer to in my videos as Sharon. Her and 2 of her girlfriends actually gave me that nickname back around, I want to say it was around 1998 or 1999 is when I first got that nickname. Yeah. Sharon, the woman, that's not a real name, but I refer to her in my videos as Sharon. Woman who I refer to as Sharon and 2 of her girlfriends when I was living in California gave me the nickname the king of verbal seduction and the king of kinky dirty talk. And that was mainly because, as you know the story with Sharon, first me and her were fuck buddies, and then we slowly but surely transitioned into becoming just friends, which is never something most men want to do, is go from being fuck buddies to just friends. But after we became just friends, the interesting thing about our relationship, Sharon would still challenge me and dare me to seduce different like friends of hers, or if we were at a party, she would pick out women and say, I bet you can't seduce her. And over half the time, I would end up seducing these women to the point where it just amazed her. She said, Alan, I got to give you props. You're the king. She said, I've never known a guy in my life, and I've interacted with quite a few guys. She said, I've never known a guy that was able to seduce women, particularly women who were like considered bitches, like hard to get along with bitch type women. She said, I've never known a guy who can seduce women as quickly and effectively as you. She said, you're the king. You're the king, and you're the king of kinky phone sex and dirty talk. Man, most of you should know this, but when it comes to just kinky dirty talk, do you know I've had phone sex starting roughly 1991 up until now? I've had phone sex with over 2,100 women in my life. Yes, over 2,100 women in my life, with a good percentage of those women paying me money for it. Yes, I say in my book, Who Said Again, if you own that book, you'll see where I say, I essentially for a period of time was what was known as a phone sex gigolo. A phone sex gigolo. Yeah, women would actually pay me to this day, as recently as just early this year. I've had women pay me for phone sex. Yep, I've had women pay me for phone sex in 2019. So anyway, those are the 2 nicknames I do officially have, is the Godfather of direct verbal game advice and the king of verbal seduction and the king of kinky dirty talk. So I don't need another nickname to add to the list. Because the reason why I would be reluctant to ever seriously categorize myself as the king of the manosphere, or the king of even the black manosphere, is because unlike the attraction and seduction community, otherwise known as the pickup community, the manosphere covers a broad range of topics. The manosphere covers a broad range of topics. There's topics for men related to career improvement, physique improvement, financial improvement, overcoming divorce, stuff to do with child custody and fighting unfair child support payments, stuff to do with race relations, and so on and so on. The manosphere as a whole covers a wide range of topics. And due to that, I would never seriously and legitimately categorize myself as the king of the worldwide manosphere or even the king of the black manosphere, because there's some areas of talking points where I will say that there's a lot of other men who are prominent in the manosphere and the black manosphere that have much more expertise in certain areas than I do. Like you take O'Shea Duke Jackson. Now, I know most of you are going to be expecting me to say something critical or insulting about him, considering that he took it upon himself to roast me. But one thing I will say about O'Shea Duke Jackson, on his show, on his channel, he covers a wide range of topics that go many times above and beyond the area of dating and relationships. I've seen him cover a wide range of topics. Do it, money management, health and fitness, entrepreneurship, the global economy, and so on and so on. So, I'm not that diverse. My main thing is stuff to do with dating, relationships, and male-female intersexual dynamics. So in that regard, I would never truly legitimately consider myself the king of the manosphere, the king of the black manosphere, because I think the manosphere covers a wide range of issues. Now, in my anger, though, the reason why I did say that is that specifically when it comes to dating and relationships, talking points that fall in the category of dating and relationships and male-female intersexual dynamics, I do genuinely feel like I have influenced more major talking points among bloggers and podcasters and even authors than any other single person in the manosphere that talks about dating and relationships, and even more specifically, the black manosphere. I would say no less than 50% of the talking points you hear various bloggers and podcasters talk about under the category of dating and relationships, attraction and seduction, dating and relationships, male-female intersexual dynamics. I was arguably the first person, starting with the advent of the internet, to start talking about those things in a very public manner. Direct verbal game. I was the first person to get on the internet and start really talking about direct verbal game, more than anybody. That includes black people and non-black people. Nobody was really talking about direct verbal game back in 1999 like I was. Nobody. The sexual duplicity of women. That's probably the second most thing I would say I was the first one to talk about, is the sexually duplicitous nature of women. Nobody was talking about that when I first got on the internet. Most men, when I first got on the internet, were either divide women into one or two categories, either good girls or sluts, either prudish, strictly monogamy-oriented good girls or kinky, promiscuous sluts. They either had them in one of them two categories. They didn't have any shades of gray in the middle. I was the first guy to really talk about those shades of gray in the middle. Because the reality is most women are not 100% good girls or 100% sluts. There's a few women who are, but most women are somewhere in those shades of gray in the middle. And I was the first prominent guy in the manosphere to talk about that and emphasize that. The concept of no free attention and putting a lot of emphasis on your non-sexual time, attention, and companionship. I was the first one to talk about that, starting with the advent of the internet. I was the first one to talk about that. Now, I had at least a couple people say, Alan, I don't know, I'm not sure. I think Tom Likas was talking about that before you. Not to my memory, because I used to listen to Tom Likas when I lived in Los Angeles, starting with about 1996 and 1997. The three main things Tom Likas used to talk about was stuff related to, and number one, Tom Likas is not really officially a part of the manosphere. Some people include him in the manosphere, but I've never heard him mention the term manosphere on his show. But anyway, let's say he was a part of the manosphere. Tom Likas mainly used to talk about three things in the mid to late 90s, which was avoiding marriage. He was pretty much anti-marriage, even though he's been married 3 times. He was anti-single mothers. He did not believe in men dating single mothers. And he was all about watching out for women who are materialistic gold diggers. Watching out for women who are materialistic gold diggers. But I never heard him talk about just valuing your non-sexual time, attention, and companionship to the degree that I did. He mainly talked about protecting your financial resources and material possessions from women. But he didn't talk about valuing your non-sexual time, attention, and companionship like I did starting with 1999 and beyond. What's another major talking point? I mean, I could probably list a bunch if I was being nitpicky, but those are some of the most major ones. Kinky dirty talk, particularly in the very first conversation. Before, when I got on the internet, nobody was encouraging men to talk dirty to women in the very first conversation. There were some men who talked about talking dirty to women once you had them in bed and once you were actually fucking them. But as far as talking dirty to women, like in the very first conversation, and even more specifically, within the first 5 to 10 minutes of your very first conversation, nobody was talking about that before me. Nobody was talking about that before me. I guarantee you, nobody was talking about that before me. Along with that, nobody was talking about using phone sex as a form of verbal seduction, like I was back in 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002. Nobody was talking about that. A lot of stuff I cover in the beta male revolution, as well as the possibility of sex. Almost all the talking points in those two books, nobody was talking about those things before me. So that was what prompted me to say, I'm the king of the manosphere. I'm the king of the black manosphere. I'm the king of all these dating relationships, talking points that are utilized in the manosphere, because a lot of stuff that people talk about related to dating and relationships and male-female intersexual dynamics, again, I was pretty much the first person to originate most of these talking, but I would say no less than 50% of them. No less than 50% of the talking points you hear related to dating and relationships and male-female intersexual dynamics, I was the very first person to talk about them in a very public way on the internet, beginning with 1999. So that's what prompted me to say that, is that I've influenced a lot of people's talking points. And quite frankly, I don't feel like people give me my due credit. There's some people who do, mainly my followers and my clients, of course. But as far as people who aren't my loyal followers and clients, I don't believe that a lot of people give me my due credit. Matter of fact, if I had to highlight at least one other YouTube person that did acknowledge that, was my man C Boogie, who I call Lil Bruh. The last time I did a live stream with C Boogie, we did a live stream, it was like a month or two ago. And towards the end, he was giving me a lot of my due props and due respect, which I very much appreciated. And that was one of the things he said, man. He basically, I can't remember his exact words, but it was to the effect of, he said, Alan, I don't feel like a lot of people in the manosphere, and more particularly the black manosphere, really appreciate your contributions and your influence on the manosphere and the black manosphere. And he was basically like, a lot of people do not give you your due props, your due credit that you deserve, given what you've accomplished and achieved since the early 2000s. A lot of people don't give you your due props and due credit. And it's the truth. I agree with him. It's the truth. It's the truth, man. That's why I was angry in that video. Because I don't feel like a lot of people give me my due props, man, in terms of the degree of influence I had over this manosphere. Like when I was on Blog Talk Radio, man, I was one of the few people on Blog Talk Radio, particularly black people, that used to interview some of the most well-respected authors in the world. Esther Perel, man, she's worldwide known, man. Go look at my list of guests that I interviewed on Blog Talk Radio between 2007. There was nobody on Blog Talk Radio who could equal or exceed the quantity and quality of guests that I had on Blog Talk Radio. I interviewed well-known Hollywood celebrities. I interviewed some of the most well-known and well-respected people in the world of dating and relationships advice, evolutionary psychology. I interviewed the likes of like Robert Greene. Man, I interviewed a lot of top-notch people. There was nobody else on Blog Talk Radio who was interviewing, again, both the quantity of guests that I did, as well as the quality and caliber of guests that I did. I was a motherfucker on Blog Talk Radio. I mean, I had the type of guests that you would have if you had like a cable TV show or a really nationally syndicated broadcast radio show. That's the type of guests I had on my Blog Talk Radio show. And ain't nobody currently, even on YouTube, who would be able to match me on that. And ain't nobody on YouTube, black or non-black, that would be able to match me on that. The people I interviewed on Blog Talk Radio. So for those who criticize my huge ego, which I do, I got a big ego, I never denied that. But in many ways, I have a right to have a huge ego, man. When you look at my resume of achievements and accomplishments, starting with roughly I'd say 1999, which is when my first ebook version, Mode 1, dropped. Starting with 1999 to now, roughly the last 20 years, man, I would match my resume of achievements and accomplishments with anybody. With anybody. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Middle Eastern, anybody who's considered a prominent figure in the manosphere. I would match my resume of accomplishments and achievements with anybody. Okay, now to what I really want to talk about. Like I said, for this portion, I'm going to give a general overview on the free portion, then I'm going into more detail on the my Patreon portion. Now, as you know, in my last video, I reiterated the fact that there's basically 5 general methods of getting women in bed. Pretty much every method you can think of a man getting a woman in bed, and you can arguably say even vice versa, a woman getting a man in bed, is going to generally fall into 5 general categories. And that would be, again, attraction, seduction, dishonesty and misleading and manipulative behavior, or for short, dishonesty and manipulation, financial negotiation, and coercion. And when I talked about that recently on my last video, I had at least one guy wrote me and said, Alan, I would assess and assert that attraction probably has the least risk involved, because most of the women are letting you know that they're attracted to you, want to go to bed with you. And a lot of times they're the ones, making the first move on you. So I would assume that has the least risk involved. And on the flip side, I would assume coercion has the highest degree of risk involved, because you can end up in prison for things like sexual assault and rape and date rape, etc. at all. And he said, but what about those middle 3? Seduction, dishonesty and manipulation, and financial negotiation. If you had to evaluate at minimum those 3 in terms of risk versus reward, how would you evaluate those 3 of the 5? Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give a general overview of each of the 5 categories, and then I'm going to save some of my more detailed commentary on each one for the Patreon exclusive portion. Okay, here we go. Let's start with attraction. Attraction. General description of what I mean by attraction. Attraction happens when a member of the opposite sex, or in the case of homosexuals and bisexuals, a member of your own gender, finds themselves naturally, keyword naturally drawn to you and naturally motivated to spend time with you in either a romantic manner, a strictly sexual manner, or at minimum, a purely platonic manner, based on a combination of your physical attributes, such as, your facial looks, your physique, etc., as well as your non-physical attributes and behavioral traits, such as, your intelligence, your sense of humor, your level of confidence, your level of alpha male dominance, etc. What is the inherent risk involved with attraction? For all practical purposes, there is no real risk involved with attraction, since the woman is naturally, again, that key word, naturally motivated to spend time with a man in a sexually intimate manner. What I mean by naturally is you don't have to offer that woman any money. You don't have to promise her any type of long-term monogamy. You don't have to necessarily feel obligated to spend a lot of time with her non-sexually. She's going to be naturally motivated to go to bed with you. That's attraction. That's attraction. And again, I might cover that in a little more detail in my Patreon exclusive portion. Okay, next up, seduction. Seduction. Seduction, which of course is what I tend to emphasize a lot in my books, and particularly my book, Ooh, Say It Again. Seduction comes into play when you are in a position where you have to charm and persuade a woman to go against her better judgment, go against her normal morals, values, and ethics, and generally contradict her initial or original preferences for male companionship. An example of this would be you persuading a woman to engage in short-term sex with you when she much prefers to engage in long-term sex with you, and or when you persuade a woman to engage in non-monogamous sex with you when she would much prefer to engage in strictly monogamous sex with you. Either one of those two examples, if not a combination of both of those examples, would be representative of seduction. What are the inherent risks involved with seduction? Some women may harshly criticize men, insult men, and or abruptly reject men and accuse those men of being shallow and disrespectful, while other women may experience what is known as next day guilt after experiencing a one-night stand or a casual sex-oriented weekend fling with a man because of the fear that their public image and social reputation might soon be damaged and disparaged, and they will be unfairly labeled a promiscuous slut or a hoe. Yes. And again, I will talk about this in at least a little bit more detail in my Patreon exclusive portion. Next up would be dishonesty and manipulation. Dishonesty and manipulation, which, as most people know, is something I very much frown on. It's something I very much frown on and do not really endorse or condone. Dishonest and misleading and manipulative behavior, which could generally be considered indirect gain. Indirect gain. Many men will typically employ dishonest behavior, disingenuous, which is another word for insincere behavior, and misleading and manipulative behavior with women in situations where they feel that their true, genuine desires, interests, and intentions will be abruptly rejected and or harshly criticized by women of interest. Therefore, the man instead chooses to give the woman a very dishonest and misleading impression of the type of female companionship he is really seeking. An example would be a man pretending to be content with a purely platonic friendship with a woman for a period of days, weeks, or months, when in actuality that man really wants a series of interactions with that woman that are more romantic in nature. Or a man giving a woman the misleading impression that he is seeking a long-term, emotionally profound, strictly monogamy-oriented sexual relationship, when in actuality, he is really seeking some variation of short-term, non-monogamous casual sex. What are the inherent risks involved with this method? Once a woman realizes she has been lied to, misled, and had her emotional feelings toyed with, many women will become very vengeful and vindictive and may choose to do things like commit some form of vandalism and or violence against the man who toyed with her emotions, or at bare minimum, the woman will seek to ruin that man's public image and reputation by doing something such as falsely accusing that man of sexually assaulting her or date raping her. Again, I will add more specific commentary to that method and the risk involved with that method in my Patreon exclusive portion. Next up would be what's known as financial negotiation. Financial negotiation. Financial negotiation. General description: many times men do not feel as though a woman possesses a natural and enthusiastic motivation to engage in sexual relations with them based on pure lustful attraction alone. Pure lustful attraction alone. Matter of fact, my fellow dating advisor Ron Wills recently had a video talking about the emphasis on pure lust type attraction. Pure lust type attraction. And I've talked about it myself many times. So what many men will do is resort to offering a woman cash compensation, materialistic gifts, employment or job promotion offers, or something else of material or tangible value in exchange for the woman's short-term or long-term sexual companionship. When a man offers a woman money, cash money, in exchange for a short-term non-monogamous sexual companionship, this is generally referred to as tricking. Tricking. When a man offers to pay most or all of a woman's living expenses and offers to upgrade her lifestyle, this is generally referred to as wining and dining, or being a woman's sugar daddy, or what's also known as a woman's financial sponsor. What are the inherent risks involved with this method? In many cities, states, and countries across the world, tricking is considered illegal, and it is formally categorized as solicitation for prostitution. That's the formal term for tricking. It's solicitation for prostitution, which could consequently result in jail time for men who are charged with the crime. Also, when a woman is only motivated to engage in sex with a man because of some form of financial compensation, she will always be quick to dump that man when offered more compensation by a man who is wealthier or a man who's more financially generous. I will offer more specific detail related to that in my Patreon exclusive portion. And finally, of the 5 methods for getting women in bed, and arguably the most despicable of the 5 would be coercion. 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 Anytime a man harbors anger toward women, bitterness toward women, and a high degree of resentment toward women due to the fact that he feels he has been excessively rejected by women, ignored by women, and or disrespected or frequently manipulated by his former female companions, he may choose to desperately resort to some form of coercion in order to secure female sexual companionship with a woman. This could include rape, date rape, kidnapping, torture, persistent sexual harassment and stalking, or even something as extreme as murdering a woman right after having sex with her, or murdering a woman after having his sexual advances abruptly rejected by a woman. Typically, this type of man is considered to be mentally unbalanced and emotionally unstable and may require psychiatric treatment. The inherent risk involved. When a man commits any form of sexual assault, physical harm, or worse, murder, it is inevitable that this man will be charged with a felony or at minimum a misdemeanor crime and will usually have to experience some degree of jail time and or time in prison, and he will have to officially register himself as a sex offender. I will add some more commentary to this in my Patreon exclusive portion. If you want to hear more specific detailed commentary on each of those 5, join me in my Patreon exclusive portion. Okay, welcome to my Patreon exclusive portion, where I'm just going to add at least a little bit more commentary on each of those 5 methods and the risk versus reward of each one. Again, attraction, there's not much to add. Yeah, when you have sex with a woman just because of what I would call pure lustful attraction, number one, that means a woman is going to be what I refer to as a reciprocator. So she's going to be down for whatever type of sex you're down for. You know, if you're down for long-term sex, she's going to be down for long-term sex. If you're down for short-term sex, she's going to be down for short-term sex. If you want monogamous sex, she's going to be down for monogamous sex. If you want non-monogamous sex, she's going to want non-monogamous sex. She's going to be down for it. So, yeah. Attraction, that's typically based on, she finds a lot of the things you have to offer physically appealing, your overall looks, your sense of sex appeal, as well as some non-physical things, such as it could be your intelligence, your sense of humor, your degree of ambition in life, the way you get along with people, your leadership qualities, your sense of dominance, alpha male dominance, your strong backbone, your outspokenness, etc. So when a woman is attracted to you, she's not really going to give you any problems, you know, and for the most part, she's not going to play any games with you. She's just going to pretty much either one or two things. When you let her know that you're attracted to her, she's going to pretty much immediately and straightforwardly reciprocate your desires, interests, and intentions. Or in many cases, she might make the first move, which is what I refer to as mode 0 situation. That's what I call mode 0. Anytime a woman approaches you and initiates a conversation with you first, and all you got to do is close the deal, so to speak, that means that you're experiencing a mode 0 situation. Mode 0. Okay, as far as seduction, which is something I, of course, highly emphasize in my book, Ooh, Say It Again. The main key component you got to have to make seduction work is, again, what's known as having a mouthpiece. A mouthpiece. The formal term I would say is you got to have above average to exceptional verbal communication skills, as well as, I would say, at least a decent level of what's known as charisma and personal and persuasive charm. Charisma and personal and persuasive charm. All those things combined together is known as your mouthpiece. When you got above average to exceptional verbal communication skills, conversation skills, and you have at least a slightly above average to exceptional degree of personal and persuasive charm and charisma, that means you have what's known as a mouthpiece. That's the key ingredient you have to have in order to make seduction work. If you don't have a mouthpiece, you're not really going to be able to seduce a woman. You're not. That's the main thing I help men with in my one-on-one, face-to-face coaching sessions. Yeah, that's the main reason why I have my one-on-one face-to-face coaching sessions. Is I help. That's at least one of the top 2 to 3 things I help men in when I do my one-on-one face-to-face coaching sessions. Is I help men with their mouthpiece, develop their mouthpiece. There's a lot of men in society who have a less than average mouthpiece. I've had a number of women tell me that over the years. I can't tell you how many women would have told me, starting with when I was in my 20s. Because that's probably the number one thing I've always got a lot of compliments on. Like some guys have told me, they say, Alan, I think you've got a lot of women in bed because of your looks, because you're what most women would consider a reasonably handsome guy. And I'm flattered by that compliment, but I would argue against that. My looks have not been the number one thing that's caused me to get a lot of pussy. I would say at best, I would rank my looks as the second most thing that's helped me get a lot of pussy. The number one thing that's helped me get a lot of pussy is my mouthpiece. And if you were to talk to most of the women who've gone to bed with me, they would tell you that. I can't tell you how many women have given me 5-star compliments on my mouthpiece. I would say no less than 4 out of every 5 women that I've had casual sex with, that's the number one thing they would tell me. They'd say, Alan, you got, a lot of them wouldn't actually use the term mouthpiece, but they would just say, you have exceptional persuasion skills and seduction skills, verbal seduction skills. They would say, yeah, your verbal seduction skills are almost unmatched. Your talk dirty skills are almost unmatched. Yeah, I can't tell you how many women have. That's why I eventually got the nickname the king of verbal seduction and the king of kinky dirty talk. Because I've had so many women in my life tell me that. They're like, Alan, you have some of the best verbal seduction and erotic dirty talk skills of any man I've ever encountered in my life. But yeah, you have to. When it comes to seduction, you have to have a great mouthpiece. You have to have anywhere from an above average, excuse me for a second, to exceptional mouthpiece. Now, as far as under the category of risk versus reward, see, one of the reasons why a lot of guys tend to shy away from seduction, well, I already listed one reason. Some guys just don't feel like they have a mouthpiece. They don't feel like they have a mouthpiece. And the second most reason is because a lot of guys are profoundly afraid of abrupt rejection. Abrupt, straightforward rejection. A lot of men can't handle that. I would say just about any man who gravitates towards pickup artists and dating coaches who promote more of an indirect method is because they're afraid of abrupt, straightforward rejection. So I would say next to lack of confidence in your mouthpiece, the second most thing that causes men to shy away from seduction as a method of getting women in bed is because a lot of men don't feel like they have personal and persuasive charm. Well, that relates to the mouthpiece and charisma and verbal communication skills, which is known as your mouthpiece. And the second thing, they just scared of rejection. They're scared of rejection, and along with rejection, they're scared of being harshly criticized and insulted. They're scared of being harshly criticized and insulted. So that's why a lot of men shy away from seduction. A lot of men just tend to assume that most women are not going to be down for a one-night stand, a weekend fling, or some other variation of short-term, non-monogamous casual sex. So they go with the next method involved, which is dishonesty and manipulation. Dishonesty and manipulation. Yeah. The number one guys who are going to go with dishonesty and manipulation are generally guys who don't feel like they're charming and or persuasive. Who are guys who don't feel like they're charming and or persuasive. In other words, they feel like they have an inadequate mouthpiece, seductive mouthpiece. Or secondly, guys who are just profoundly afraid of being abruptly rejected, or they're afraid of being scolded, harshly criticized, admonished, and insulted. So they choose to, use various forms of indirect verbal game, and which usually includes dishonest behavior, disingenuous behavior, and misleading and manipulative behavior. Well, another form of indirect game is not just pure dishonesty and manipulation, but was also known as vague and ambiguous behavior, that would fall into mode 2. When you're being vague, ambiguous, and overly cautious, but not necessarily dishonest, then that's when you're exhibiting mode 2 behavior. Mode 2 is when your behavior is overly polite, overly cautious, and vague and ambiguous. So that's one form of indirect game that is not representative of just flat out dishonesty and manipulation, would be mode 2 behavior. Mode 3 behavior is when you're just exhibiting behavior that's dishonest, disingenuous, and misleading and manipulative because you're a verbal coward. As far as the risk and rewards involved, well, the reward, of course, is simply that you can get a woman in bed by exhibiting behavior that's dishonest, insincere, and misleading and manipulative. So you can get a woman in bed, but you do run a fairly high risk with women because you're going to promote women to become very vengeful and vindictive. Vengeful and vindictive, particularly in this Me Too environment. Again, I want to emphasize, man, a high percentage of the men who have been the targets of the Me Too movement, have been the targets of Me Too movement allegations, have typically been men who've engaged in some form of dishonest behavior, disingenuous behavior, and misleading and manipulative behavior with women. Women don't like to have their feelings and emotions toyed with, man. I told y'all at least one really extreme situation where a friend of my cousin's, when I was young, there was a guy who was a friend of my cousin. He was guilty of cheating on a woman and toying with her emotions. She came to his crib and shot him in the head. Yep. She came to his crib and shot him in the head. Now, that's rare and extreme, but it still happens. Yeah, she came and shot him in the head because he misled her to believe that she was the only woman that he was fucking. Basically, he misled her to believe that she was his girlfriend, when in actuality, he was fucking like a whole bunch of other different women, and she found out about it, and she was so hurt about it, she came and shot that motherfucker, man. She was willing to go to prison. She was willing to get revenge, but at the expense of going to prison. She was willing to get revenge at the expense of going to prison. I've told other stories before. You've heard me tell stories. Like, I had a frat brother. He had a woman. He was cheating on, man. She came into his apartment and destroyed like $1,500 worth of his clothes. Just destroyed them. I've seen guys get their cars vandalized and damaged. I've known women who, if they had like a big brother or an older male cousin, they would have their big brother, older cousin go beat up that dude. Yeah, I've known guys who've gotten beat up because of the fact that they toyed with a woman's emotions or cheated on a woman. Yeah, so you run risk, man, when you do that, man. I don't believe in toying with women's emotions to get the pussy. I don't believe in doing that shit, man. To me, you're asking for a lot of bad karma. You're asking for some bad karma, man. You're asking for some seriously bad karma. I don't endorse that at all. I don't endorse or condone that at all. I don't endorse or condone any form of dishonest, disingenuous, or misleading and manipulative behavior. As far as financial negotiation, typically guys are going to gravitate towards financial negotiation in one of two scenarios. Again, when they feel like they have a less than average mouthpiece, they don't have a high degree of personal and persuasive charm. They don't feel like they have a high degree of charisma. They're not really what most people call a smooth talker. They don't feel like they're a smooth talker or a seductive conversationalist. And number two, when men feel like the woman who they're trying to fuck has a very indifferent or less than average degree of sexual attraction for them. They don't really feel like that woman has a truly genuine, lustful attraction for them. So their way of offering an added incentive or reward is to offer that woman money. Or, so again, to clarify between tricking and whining and dining, tricking, anytime you offer a woman money directly in exchange for a sexual companionship, that's tricking. So if you go up to a woman and say, hey, I'll give you $75 to suck my dick, that's tricking. If you say, hey, I'll give you $100 or $150 for me to fuck you for the next hour and a half, 2 hours, that's tricking. That's tricking. Again, the main risk involved with tricking is in many cities and states in this country, in the United States, as well as in many cities worldwide, tricking is actually illegal because tricking is considered solicitation of prostitution. So that's illegal. I've known people personally who got embarrassed in the newspaper. They had their name and picture in the newspaper because they got arrested for tricking. Yeah, so you can risk having your name and face in your local newspaper. You could end up having to pay a fine, or in some cases you go to jail. Yeah, you spend at least a day or two in jail because of tricking. So I'm not the biggest fan of tricking, man. I'm not the biggest fan of tricking. I don't really per se pass judgment on guys who tricking. My attitude is, if you know how to circumvent the legalities of it, more power to you. But I don't ever directly or enthusiastically endorse or condone tricking. Again, I'm more about attraction and seduction. Attraction and seduction. I'm not the biggest fan of tricking. But I would go as far as say I even think tricking is better than dishonesty and manipulation. I honestly think tricking. Now, what I've heard a lot of people confuse and conflate with tricking is whining and dining. I've heard a lot of guys on different podcasts and live streams, they talk about tricking and whining and dining like it's almost the same thing. It's not. Number one, whining and dining is legal. There's nothing illegal about whining and dining compared to tricking. Yeah, whining and dining is legal. Like, it's not illegal to be a sugar daddy or a woman's financial sponsor, whereas it's illegal to be a trick in many cities, states, and countries. It's illegal. But it's not illegal to be a sugar daddy. The main risk in being a whiner and diner or a sugar daddy, among other things, is that, number one, I don't like the idea of being a sugar daddy because I don't like the idea of knowing that the only reason why a woman is giving me some pussy is because, I'm helping her pay some of her bills, or I bought her some materialistic gifts. I'm helping her pay, being nice to her, financially generous with her. I don't like that feeling, man. I don't know up to this point when I've ever truly been. For most of my life, I've always been too broke and erratically employed to be any woman's sugar daddy. The other thing is that when you're a woman's sugar daddy, the moment that woman crosses paths with a guy who's just as handsome, if not better looking than you, sexier and better in bed than you, and most importantly, wealthier than you and or more financially generous than you, she's going to just quickly dump your ass. Believe that shit. She's going to quickly dump your ass. She's going to quickly dump your ass. The minute that woman, I'm telling you, the minute that woman finds a guy that's just as handsome as you, if not more handsome than you, just as sexy as you, if not more smooth, seductive, and sexier than you, and most importantly, she finds a guy that's wealthier than you and more financially generous than you, she's going to drop you like that. She's going to do what's known in the manosphere as monkey branching. Monkey branching. That's what they call monkey branching. She's going to monkey branch. Yeah, she's going to dump you and go to that other guy. Now, if you're prepared for that, then it's no big deal. If you're prepared for that, then it's no big deal. But if you find yourself really emotionally attached to a woman, that could cause you to experience a lot of heartbreak. And who is this writing me? Yeah, you experience a lot of heartbreak. So there you go. The fifth and final thing is coercion. Coercion. Again, that's to me, that's the most despicable of the 5 methods of getting a woman in bed. That's the most despicable, is coercion. And there's just really nothing good about that. To me, if you're, as I said in the free portion, if you're a man who has to resort to some form of coercion to get a woman to have sex with you, then I would say 99% chance, that means you're mentally unstable. You're mentally unbalanced and emotionally unstable. In other words, something about you is psychotic. You're like psychotic. You're a blatant misogynist and you're psychotic. You need to seek help. You need to seek professional help, like from a therapist or something. Seriously, if you're tempted to do something like rape a woman, date rape a woman, kidnap and torture a woman, physically harm a woman, yeah, you need to seek professional help. I tell you what movie along these lines interesting to watch. Everybody knows about Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper. If you're a fan of Batman, otherwise known as The Dark Knight, there's this animated version of The Dark Knight that a follower told me about called Gotham by Gaslight, or Gaslight by Gotham, one of the two. Gotham by Gaslight or Gaslight by Gotham. It's based in the United Kingdom in like the 19th century, and Batman is trying to find out who Jack the Ripper is. Man, that for a cartoon, that is deep. That movie is deep. You need to watch that. That movie for a cartoon is very deep. Matter of fact, it has an R rating. It has an R rating. But yeah, man, in simple terms, the risk involved with that is you could end up in prison, or you could end up on death row when you resort to coercion. So I frown heavily on that. I find it despicable. And anyway, in just under 3 hours, I will be doing my second live stream for the month. So if you're a $10 subscriber or up, join me there.